Disclaimer. This contains spoilers to the web series slash fanimes, Penalty About and Penalty X. If you care for spoilers, even the minor ones, and haven't watched it yet, I suggest watching them before coming back to this video. Otherwise, enjoy. So, initially, I wanted to make this a live stream about this because I would like to see what the chat has to say about it. However, my internet could be a bit shit at points that frames keep dropping no matter how much I try to have it not happen. So, fuck it! This is gonna be a YouTube video. As some of you may know, I have a shit ton of fanime slash web series. One of which I disown, some I'm okay with still owning, and others I am sure as hell proud of. What actually started it all for me was Penalty About and its sequel series, Penalty X. However, it wasn't always like this. So let's start from the very beginning, shall we? So, believe it or not, up until late 2011, Penalty About wasn't always a thing. So despite concepts and have characters that aren't always connected to them, I always have been more into writing fanfictions, really. And I know what some of you are going to say. Fanfiction? Have you written some yaoi or done something like self-insert X-canon fanfictions? No, I have not, actually. I was more into my crossovers at the time, specifically Azumanga Daioh and Super Mario RPG. Them's the hyperfixations, I'm afraid. Speaking of hyperfixations, one thing I was hyper-focused on at the time, as ashamed as I am to admit nowadays, was the Nostalgia Critic.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mindfuck!
One thing that I thought was a little bit weird at the time was that Dogwalker did not like character designs with black scaleras. Example being Shan Yu from Mulan and one of the animated interpretations of the Joker from Batman. And even though I still liked watching his reviews at the time, I thought that that type of character design was pretty cool, not gonna lie. So I decided to take a pop-up girls doll I had at the time, which I gave a blue wig to, and tried to base it off of that, and thus came Moxan. So yeah, you could say that the initial design was kinda out of semi-spite, really. Fun fact, at first I didn't know what name I should give Moxan at first, since she was just existing and was kind of called the inverted eye girl, really. However, I remember taking the liking of the name Roxanne, but I wanted to be unique and quirky, so I replaced the R with the M and I got Moxan. Mind you, I still did not have an original story around that point, just ideas and concepts. Again, I was focused on my crossover stuff. Until the following hell crashes upon me. So, before we got to hell, I was working on the remake from one of my oldest fanfictions, Super Azumanga RPG, which was called Rightful Thesis. I, foolishly, was wanting to take it more seriously since I thought the first iteration was kinda crap. I mean, it kinda was, but there was some charm to it, really. However, I was using a netbook at the time, which was riddled with malware, and I did not know how to back up my files at the time. Plus, one night, back in 2011, I was sleeping in a very cramped-ass room, and my 15-year-old dumbass kinda left the netbook on the floor, and thus, my sister accidentally stepped on it when she was trying to get something. So, to say that this netbook, which had plans for that fanfiction, was far gone, would be an understatement. At that point, my depressed asshole just sat there with no personal computer, having to resort to either one of the family computers that still works at the time, or the internet channel on my Wii. I just felt a lot of demotivation right then and there. Sometime later, when I was kind of mindlessly scrolling through TV tropes, I discovered the page for web novels. Now, for the benefit of hindsight, I'm not too sure if it's the serial web novels or the web literatures thing. TV shows just make things a little bit more confusing now. But yeah, I discovered the page for web novels. I think about that, and then I remember Moxan, which around the point I just remembered. I think I remember staring at just for a little bit, and then I thought to myself, yeah, I could make a story related to her. So I made a DeviantArt journal for those that are following me at the time, basically discussing my desire of making web novels instead of fanfiction. Except possibly in a more jumbled up mess than I convey it in this video. So yeah, by that point, I've started to write the story, which was Penalty All About. You think I have everything planned out, right? Right. Yeah, no, being the dumb 16-year-old I was at the time, I was flying off the seat of my pants when writing down the chapters for this. It was a mess. There were more characters to the story than just Moxan. There are Moxan's family, Odessian, the main catalyst of the bullshit, Pantrice, and Seminar, the antagonist, kinda. People trying to help the situation, Katerlin and Hilali, the lesbian duo, Viv, the cross-dresser of the bunch, and Joden, the regular Joe. There were also Seminar's lackeys like Talapico, Koslin, and Zalan. I would say more, but I would go far too long if I did. Anyways, I have made a fantasy slice of life type of deal, starring a royally dysfunctional family. My inspiration for this story was Married with Children, which also stars a dysfunctional family and the many hijinks it has. I also used elements of my IRL family as well. You know, thinking about it, could this be considered trauma dumping? I'll think on that later. I have my own issues to deal with. Anyways, given the fact that I was 16 years old when I first started writing this, well, being in a special ed class, yeah, no, the grammar was bloody off. And while my grammar is still not the best nowadays, it's nothing compared to this. With that said, I was happy I was able to complete a story since my fanfiction, Super Awesome Manga RPG. That means people would read it, right? Right? Well, no. Aside from a couple of friends I had at the time, not many folks read the initial web novel for Penalty All About. I won't lie, it was kind of disheartening, and it kinda had me a little bit bitter about fanfictions for a bit of a while. Because at the time, it seems like to me that folks would rather read fanfiction than original independent web stories. Yeah, you could probably call that jealousy. I was a little bit bitter. I tried to write the initial version of Penalty X, which is different from the version we know now, but I wasn't really too motivated for it. I posted the first story on Fiction Press, which is like fanfiction.net, but for original stories. That didn't get that much attention either, really. And don't get me started on the bloody failed webcomic. Good gravy. The webcomic was an attempt to turn the story into a more visual format since I felt that that's what most folks, myself included, are into at the time. But I was drawing on a trackpad at the time, the IRL and internet circumstances be fucked, not to mention I was still posting on DeviantArt, which kind of blows, even before Eclipse was a thing. And by the time I was working on another page, my computer crashed, and which caused me to feel demotivated. And this is way before Filepack had autosave. Alright, I need to calm down. And on top of all of that, I was going by the web novel and my own imagination to plan out the webcomic. To say that it was an ass disaster would be an understatement. So yeah, I had a bit of another period where I felt demotivated because fuck, that was brutal. It wasn't until 2014 where I decided to pick it back up again. So, in 2014, I've gotten my first drawing tablet, which died within a couple of months. Do not buy from Monoprice, they suck. And by that point, I was motivated to do some drawing stuff. At that point, I think back to Penalty All About, and I thought that maybe an audiobook would make things a lot easier. Like have the audio be up on YouTube with a little thumbnail. I pitched the idea to this one voice acting group I was in at the time called the Light Novel Brigade, and I think they were slightly interested, but I don't think they were too interested. I was horrible at conveying myself, so I can't really blame them. At the time, I was getting more interested in fanime, and it was around the time when fanime update was starting to become a thing. I also like doing visual novel sprites at the time since, you know, it's good to have some facial expressions for your characters. So, there was interest in fanime, me wanting to do visual novel sprites, as well as looking at some playthroughs of some visual novels. I put the two and two together, and I thought, what if I make a visual novel style fanime adaptation of Penalty All About? And that's when everything explodes, at least for me. So, I made the sprites, albeit they were crudely drawn, and planned out the script for the episodes. I also scouted for as much VAs as I could, and while it was tough, I got the VAs, as well as somebody that is like the CG artist for, well, the CG scenes. So, you would think that this will be easy from there, right? Right? Okay, so, back then, I had a bit of a reputation within some circles within the fanime community that I have the worst luck when it comes to voice actors turning in their lines. Fun fact, the reason why caraflops initially exist was due to the fact that some of the VAs were taking forever to turn in their lines. Hell, I thought that caraflops was going to be a one-shot because maybe, just maybe, by the time that I finished with what was supposed to be a one-shot, I might get the lines as soon as possible. Nope! While the majority of the VAs turned in their lines for the most part, as I said, some took forever. Hell, you might have noticed that Pantrice during the first two episodes had a different VA compared to the VA she has now. And that is because the first VA was taking too long and didn't really explain to me what was happening on their end at the time. So to save the trouble, I had to get like a backup VA who later became the canon voice for Pantrice. Before then, there was a bloody 4-month period in between episode 1 and episode 2 of Penalty All About because said VA was the one I was waiting on the longest. I had a breakdown around that point because I was stressing myself out in between. And trust me, when I have a breakdown, I'm a fucking mess. The only positive thing I could say about that situation is that episode 2 came around the same time as Don't Take My Hat. I don't know, there's just some cosmic energy to that. I just love it. Now, onto my flaws of the situation. I've made the grave mistake of giving the script of the next episode as soon as the one I was working on was done. I'll take the Roman 50 on that one. I've tried to rectify this, but we'll get to that in a later chapter. Back to this situation. Aside from the Pantrice troubles, things are still going a-okay. Until the situation with episode 5 rears its ugly head. The original VAs for some of the characters did not turn in their lines despite the fact that I gave them the deadline to voice them. Due to that, I was developing some trust issues around that point. Hell, if you looked at my first weekly series, Sour Candyville Donuts, you might have noticed that all of the characters were voiced by me. That was the result from the trust issues. Back to PAA, I thought that maybe I'll contact the VAs that I was still waiting on, asking if they are still interested in voicing the characters. They all said no. So it's back to scouting for VAs. Fucking end me! After that frustrating mess, as well as some other things I'm not gonna get into, I did got some backup VAs, and bada bing, bada boom, Penalty About is done! I don't have to deal with— oh wait. So, after giving myself some time to vibe after the finale, I've decided to work on the sequel series, Penalty X. Now, this Penalty X is different from the initial version, and that's probably for the best, really. I did had some planned sprites for it when I was still working on Penalty About, but given the fact that around that point it's been so long, I wanted to update those sprites, really. Sadly, like with Penalty About, Penalty X was also having some voice acting issues. Some of the original VAs weren't responding, so I had to get new VAs. And hell, I had to replace another VA down the line because, yeah, they kinda told me that they cannot really voice the character anymore due to the mindset they were in at the time. So, I'm in hell again. But remember when I said I tried to rectify the method of sending lines? Yeah, after episode 3, I've decided to send the VAs the rest of the episodes and just say, yeah, please voice the rest of them as you have this deadline. Granted, this was my first time doing this shit, so I was not exactly the best at it, but I've tried my best. That said, all the VA troubles for one character was starting to get to me, and already I was not in the best place mentally, truth be told. It's why this, along with another series of mine, was on hiatus. I focused on Nemomiya the Chaotic Hero and 7 Guidances to Wishful Safety in the meantime. The latter being for the weekly challenge that I've hosted. But after a bit, I've decided, fuck it, and try my best to go back to Penalty X with some of the VAs I was still waiting on turning their lines around that point. Granted, some awkward shit that I will not get into happened, which caused another case of demotivation. And also COVID happened, and I want to die. But after that bullshit, I mostly stuck with my guns and finished putting the lines together. Initially, I thought of getting more CG artists to help out with the rest of the episodes, but after some thinking, I thought that it's probably best if I just do it myself. I worked as much as I could on the visuals, kind of going into maximum overdrive, which luckily it was during the days when I was motivated, which were a lot, thankfully. And I was able to finish the episodes, so let's go! I also uploaded them weekly because, I don't know, potatoes.
Listen, I want it for it to be grand, okay?
And that was the end of that journey. Now I'm fully finished with the Penalty series. I did thought about making an epilogue which was narrated by the narrator from 7 Guidances, but I've decided against it. As much as I love Penalty About and Penalty X, I wanted to move on from that point, or at least move on from making anything story related to it, you know? Gonna lie, the journey for Penalty About and Penalty X has been a decade-long nightmare. I would not be surprised if any normal person would have quit with something like this a lot sooner than I did and move on to better and grander endeavors. Nor would I blame them for that matter. But I'm not normal. Yes, I took a hiatus from this project and went on to make projects that I became more proud of, like 7 Guidances. But until the end goal, I've always come back to it. It's not perfect. There are plenty of flaws with it, especially within the original web novel. But it led me to places, and I'm very much thankful for that. I am thankful for the fact that it got me out of a rut I was in when I was still in my fanfiction shell, and kinda helped me escape a rather toxic environment that would look down upon the type of fanfics I had made at the time. That, and also getting me out of the demotivational rut I was in after the plans for Rifle Thesis was gone forever. I am thankful for the fact that writing it all those years ago got me wanting to make stories related to my own OCs. And just that, my own OCs. I am thankful for the fact that because it was the reason why I got into the community for fanime, I was able to make many friends. Some of which I became rather close to, and they are basically my dearest of friends, and dare I say, basically I see as a family at this point. So, despite the absolute hell I've gone through for this rather dysfunctional series, I am happy that it led me to these places. So, what do you think of this mess of a retrospective? Do you feel what I did was worth it? Do you think I was kind of being a stubborn fuck? Was there one project that you were dedicated to despite all odds? Feel free to say in the comment section of this video. With all that said and done, I think I'm good to go. This is Chippy Jesse of YouTube signing out. Goodbye!